Thanks to Marvel Snap data miners, we not only know every card that's going to be releasing as part of the April season, starting with Hitmonkey, the season pass card, but we now also know the entirety of the May season releases, beginning with Nebula, the season pass card for that month. If you missed my full review of the April releases, I'm going to link that video in the description down below. Today, we're going to talk through and give you my thoughts on all 5 of the new cards coming to Marvel Snap in May. Before we do that, a quick word from the sponsor of today's video.
The time is now. Lend me your strength.
Welcome to Honkai Star Rail, a new multi-platform space fantasy RPG from Hoyoverse, the makers of Genshin Impact. This cross-platform, free-to-play game features an immersive story and worldviews. Honkai Star Rail offers dozens of captivating characters with detailed expressions and their own unique flair to allow you to find a style that suits you perfectly. You will lead your group through strategic and deep turn-based combat with near endless combinations of ways to execute your ideal strategies. With unparalleled audio and visuals, the professional cinematography of Honkai Star Rail cutscenes provide an experience akin to playing through a high-quality animated TV series. Honkai Star Rail is currently in pre-launch and will arrive on April 25th, 2023. Check the pinned comment and link in my video description down below to pre-register for the game now so you can be ready to go as soon as it releases. Nebula will be the season pass card for May in Marvel Snap, and she's a little bit less of a build-around than other things like Nimrod and Zabu and Surfer and MODOK that we've seen. Just kind of a good on-rate card that also maybe dictates where your opponent's going to be forced to play over the course of the game. So 4 energy, 6 power, gets +2 stats each turn, except the turn that you play this if your opponent doesn't play a card to her location. The very obvious use case for this is following up Storm on turn 4 into that flooded location. Nobody's going to be able to play to that flooded on turns 5 and 6, meaning Nebula is going to scale up to 10 power there. As far as building around this card a little bit, obviously we have Psylocke as well as Zabu that can let you get Nebula down on turn 3, potentially giving her 3 triggers and getting up to 12 power over the course of the game, which is well above rate for most 4-drops. Negasonic Teenage Warhead also comes to mind as a card that could potentially work with Nebula. You know, your opponent feels forced to play into her path to not give you the bonus, and if you have priority going into the turn, you can Teenage Warhead the turn after and blow up whatever your opponent was deploying wherever Nebula is at. Iron Lad is the first of our Directed Series 5 releases that's been data mined for May. Also a 4/6 with the on reveal. Copy the text of your deck's top card. I would assume that Iron Lad is going to be able to double up on reveal effects that it's copying as well, meaning that could give you redundancy in terms of being a copy of Shuri a turn sooner or potentially something like Mr. Negative. However, it's definitely going to copy ongoing effects, so you could find an extra copy of Wong by utilizing this card both a turn sooner or giving you just an extra copy for whatever shenanigans you're up to with that card. I'd love to know in the comments down below what are some of your best ideas to potentially be copying with the Iron Lad. The second of our Series 5 card releases for May is Howard the Duck, 1 energy, 2 power, ongoing. Tap this to see the top card of your deck. Now, Magic the Gathering players like myself, I assume by tap, they're not referring to rotating this card 90 degrees. That's usually vernacular in mobile games for touch on your screen. And while the effect from Howard the Duck here isn't overly powerful, the fact that we're getting this as the first card in Marvel Snap that kind of has an activated ability where you're choosing to touch on this thing to have another thing happen is the first of this style of effect in Marvel Snap. And if they're comfortable creating cards like this, it really feels like it opens up a wider range of design space. Howard the Duck obviously is going to let you have a little bit more information, letting you set up your future turns. And more specifically, it kind of combos with Iron Lad that's going to release the week before it, letting you see what is on top of your deck before you commit Iron Lad to the board and get something at random. What is certainly the most novel card to be releasing in May is named High Evolutionary here. 4 energy, 7 power. At the start of your game, unlock the secret ability of all your cards with no abilities. This means High Evolutionary is not just its own card release, it's also kind of creating 7 other mini card releases with each of the vanilla cards that are becoming a card with different abilities that you can put into your deck alongside this one. While there might be a High Evolutionary deck that's basically a cookie cutter, you play High Evolutionary and then you play all 7 of the cards that they're changing, I think there's also going to be merit to exploring different options of just playing a handful of the other cards that High Evolutionary is upgrading. The base 7 stats for 4 energy that High Evolutionary provides is relatively close to on rate for a 4 energy play, so I don't think you need to get a ton of additional value out of the other cards that they're upgrading to make this a worthwhile inclusion in a deck. Let's take a look at all of the secret abilities that get unlocked by High Evolutionary here, starting with Wasp, who says, on reveal, afflict 2 random cards here with -1 power. This basically makes Wasp 3 points worth of stats for 0 energy, which is quite reasonable. Misty Knight's secret ability that gets unlocked by High Evolutionary is a theme that we see across a few of these cards that High Evolutionary enables. Specifically, she does something for us that is a bonus if we have unspent energy at the end of the turn. In this case, give another friendly card +1 power. Obviously, this means that these High Evolutionary cards are going to work well with things like Sunspot or Infinite or She-Hulk, things that incentivize you to be passing with energy up, giving us added bonus when we do exactly that. I think Shocker is probably one of the cards I expect to see play the most with High Evolutionary in a deck that's not all in on this theme. 2/3 on reveal, get the leftmost card in your hand, -1 cost. The flexibility and, more importantly, the unpredictability that making a card cheaper can give you in your hand is often going to result in decent cube equity for yourself. And if you think of this as Shocker reducing 1 off its own cost for a future turn, this is effectively becoming a 1 energy, 3 power play, which is solidly above rate for most things in Marvel Snap. Cyclops is where this mechanic of rewarding you for having unspent energy really starts to scale up, afflicting 2 random enemies at its location with -1 power at the end of a turn. This is twice the rate that you get from soaking energy into Sunspot or Misty Knight, and most notably, if you have an unspent energy at the end of the turn, it triggers all of these cards that you currently have in play. If you have an unspent energy on turns 4, 5, and 6, that's a total of -6 that Cyclops is going to get to inflict to your opponent's side of the board, effectively giving you 10 stats for about 6 energy. Thing is similar to Shocker or Wasp in that it doesn't ask you to do anything special to get extra value out of its hidden ability here. Afflicting a random card at its location with -1 power that then gets repeated twice more means that the Thing is going to be providing 9 points worth of stats for just 4 energy, which is solidly above rate for a 4 energy play. It's also worth noting that this is 9 energy worth of stats that does not die to a Shang-Chi, which is quite a valuable thing to note. Not quite sure how I feel about Abomination's hidden ability here. It costs 1 less for each enemy card in play that's afflicted with a negative power. This means if you say Wasp and then Thing before you lead into Abomination, this Abomination could be really close to free depending on how those random afflictions end up spreading out. However, if you don't have those other cards to line up into this, this is still just a 5 energy, 9 power Thing, which is pretty far below rate. Also worth noting that if you do afflict at least something, and then you play this Abomination on what would be turn 5 with a reduced cost, that is an easy way to get additional energy be unspent to trigger things like Misty Knight or Cyclops with those effects that you're looking to have. Our final card that is a hidden ability unlocked by Evolutionary is the Hulk, gaining the ongoing effect of +2 power for each turn you ended with unspent energy. A typical curve to think about how many stats this would be is if we played, say, Cyclops on turn 3, had at least 1 unspent energy on turns 4 and 5, we would have triggered Cyclops twice, meaning it's worth 8 points of stats, as well as Hulk twice, which would be 16 points worth of stats. So then the question would be, is this approximately 24 points worth of stats being added to the board for about 11 energy worthwhile? We'll have to wait and see. It probably depends on where the format ends up being. That is quite a lot of resources for only 24 stats in a world where we can get 22 points out of a Red Skull for 9 with Shuri into Red Skull. Finally, May is going to be a 5-week Marvel Snap season, meaning there is a 4th direct-to-series 5 weekly release, and that is the Living Tribunal. This card's had a silhouette in the client for some time now, but it hasn't actually been released. Very interesting / unique ongoing effect here. Split your total power evenly among all locations. So the question is going to be, what's the biggest number you can make in even just one spot while also having time to play Living Tribunal out as a 6 energy play? The obvious thing that comes to mind when making really big numbers in Marvel Snap are things like Iron Man and copying Iron Man, whether it's with a Mystique or an Onslaught, but that's also going to be a lot of ongoing effects to be leaning on, meaning there will likely be a lot of counterplay from things like Rogue or Enchantress. Either way, I do appreciate the fact that Living Tribunal is effectively an alternate style win condition being introduced to Marvel Snap, but it is an alternate style win condition that doesn't change the game for both players, meaning your opponent still gets to play a normal game of Marvel Snap while your focus is different, unlike something like, say, Galactus, which turns the game on its head for both players, often rendering one player's deck just inefficient. I'd love to know in the comments down below which of these upcoming Marvel Snap cards you are most likely to spend your collector's tokens on and why. As always, if you enjoyed my musing on the topic, snap that like button to help this video reach some more people. And if you missed my review of the April card releases that are coming up a little bit sooner than these ones in May, be sure to check the video description down below for a link to that. We'll see you back again here on YouTube for some more Marvel Snap content real soon, as always.